If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple, just like dominoes, one by one. They'll go down. That's why today I'm announcing my plan to shatter the left-wing censorship regime and to reclaim the right to free speech for all Americans. And reclaim is a very important word in this case because they've taken it away. In recent weeks, bombshell reports have confirmed that a sinister group of deep state bureaucrats, Silicon Valley tyrants, left-wing activists, and depraved corporate news media have been conspiring to manipulate and silence the American people.
Maybe.
They have collaborated to suppress vital information on everything from elections to public health.
You can pause
the
it right
censorship.
There.
It's very interesting when people talk about free speech because it's like what free speech are you talking about?
Yes, correct.
Because like you censor a lot of stuff when it's stuff about trans people, stuff about black people, stuff about Palestinian people, stuff about immigrants, that gets censored.
Yes.
Everywhere. But if you want to tell people to drink horse medicine to save a virus, that gets pushed out. So I'm very confused about what we're talking about here.
Well, I think that's the question because he was on record as saying like CBS should get their license revoked because they fact checked them, right? I think ABC, he was calling that they're the worst network. So he has been saying these things about other like threatening them. And so again, like does free speech mean like we have the ability to say whatever we want to say? Because remember, even Elon Musk, who was supposed to be like, I'm a free speech, whatever, absolutist, whatever word that he called. But then when he bought X or Twitter, he started to take out or kick off accounts, including the one that followed his private jet all around the country, right? And so, again, like, free speech, but whose speech is considered free? What I hear you saying is white speech.
Yeah.
Right? Any speech that bigs you up or that is white supremacist speech, that's cool. But like you said, Miracle, any speech that threatens that white supremacist structure probably is going to be in some way defunded or shut down. Is this something that we as producers of media should be concerned with?
I mean, what's a little a shutdown, state violence, state censorship to be worried about? But I will tell you, like when we're having these conversations and your immediate thought is like, well, what have the Democrats said they're going to do to protect free speech? And when you don't have an answer, that shows you the state of survival that we really need to be in. And I do think that people are now trying to create their own media, thinking about the TikTok ban and how our government tried to, under a Democratic government, ban TikTok and ban our access to information. And so now is really the time to think about the ways in which we're able to connect, how we're able to put out media. We're going to have to start doing like projectors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, talking to our elders and figuring out like what do they do with the radio, going back to radio stations, all these different things. But I do think there is some cause for concern. You know, even today with, 9495 possibly being passed, I do think that we're going to have to start to organize and mobilize a lot more. But, who knows? Because it seems like he has a hit list. And we may not be on his hit list. He may, review our episodes and be like, the MAGA Muslims like me. And he may let us go. We may be.
I mean, you were his lawyer.
He may be
in
like
New York City. I mean,
he'd be like, I don't hate free speech. I support, This Week in White Supremacy. Like, I let them go. Who knows? But I do think the way that we have come to know the world is going to radically change because people decided not to fight for the world that we have.
Right. I did just want to say before I come to you, Trouble, that you mentioned House Bill 9495, which is the Stop Terror Finance and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. And basically what if this bill passes, it would give the United States the ability to just terminate any tax exempt status of any quote unquote terror supporting group. So if this passes, somebody could say, one hood, we saw y'all show up at this rally in support of Palestinians. Therefore, we're taking away your nonprofit status.
But we didn't
right?
have no video up at a rally.
I'm just saying this could be something that could happen, right? We saw it could be right. We saw you at this rally supporting against police. We saw y'all organize against the police in Pittsburgh. Therefore, we feel like you're supporting terror. Y'all got Muslim names. You know, y'all wearing all types of Palestinian stuff on the show. Y'all got Palestinian nails.
I wonder who he's talking to. I wonder who he's talking
Palestinian nails is crazy.
I wonder who he is talking to and who is he talking about. And luckily, as an individual, I express and I fight for people who are oppressed.
Come on,
I try to use my fashion as a faction in my activism. Let's go.
I'm not coming at
but
you.
You didn't see no
specifically.
one hood stuff. You didn't see any one hood stuff when I was out here fighting for freedom.
We do have a red, black, and green in one.
That's
hood.
RBG.
Again.
Revolutionary but gorgeous.
Right, but that's
on all
RBG.
digital streaming platforms.
That's RBG.
Do you see how, let it out. Any other things of note that I've done that you forgot to mention?
I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying us collectively, Miracle.
And I told you what my price was. Talking about you have a contract, you can't leave.
Wow.
So anyway, that's what the bill means.
Yeah.
And if this bill passes, organizations like ours, organizations that do this type of work, that strive to be also radical in many ways, that radicalism, remember, it was like, under Trump, it was the black
identity extremist.
Black identity extremist, right? That could mean our tax exempt status can be taken away under Trump, particularly if you're a dictator on day one. That could happen just right on day one all across the board.
Just want to say, it doesn't have to be radical organizations. They could just basically say any organization that talks about birth control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any organization talks about abortion. Any organization
radical
talks
is
about
a very fluid
interracial
spectrum.
marriage. Like
Right.
I think a lot of times we think when we hear terrorism, we think of violence or Muslims or Islam, but we got to remember that what they have been talking about is a fight for men's rights, and it's talking about women and feminists have been terrorists.
Yeah.
So we are not even thinking about all these other nonprofits. I know, Trouble, you had wanted to interject.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I wanted to talk on the topic of free speech and how one could organize against that. And I just wanted to shout out One Hood.
Yes.
Because we have a program coming up in January called the One Hood Media Academy.
Yes.
For those who want to learn how to navigate media from a more conscious perspective, right? How do you navigate knowing that there are things like AI out there, knowing that there are platforms that are limiting the things that you can say and the topics that you can talk about, and how to kind of formulate your own thought processes, how to break down news sites and like how they're politically aligned and stuff like that. And I don't know if John could put a QR code on the screen.
Yeah,
if that's possible.
Or we could put a link in the chat or in the description.
There we go.
Hey, if you're a young person that wants to learn about how media is affecting folks, particularly like now more than ever, because a lot of the ways in which Trump was able to reach a lot of younger men was using like podcasts, was using social media, obviously like Elon Musk. And there was like a longer video that broke down like why when Elon buys Twitter and all of the misinformation he was able to spread that led up to, him buying Twitter to be quote unquote politically neutral, to not only endorsing Donald Trump, but using the full weight of his social media platform to push individuals towards voting for Donald Trump, and he won, right? So then what's the next step, right?
Yeah.
And will these billionaires attempt to influence more, obviously more aspects of our lives, so empowering young people to see through that is a big thing. We had another clip in this Trump 6-minute diatribe where he spoke directly about his plan that we told people. Again, it was weird to see particularly these young black like drill rappers promoting Donald Trump, but now Donald Trump is saying he wants to have the death penalty for drug dealers. Do you want to play that?
Every gang, street crew, and drug network in America, every single one of them will be dismantled. We already know where these turf wars and drug dens are. We know who the people are. And we're going to charge them and charge the culprits with every crime that we can find. We're going to be fair, but we're going to be tough. We also need the death penalty for drug dealers. So important. The consequences.
So
Somebody tell Waka Flocka that right now. Be like, but this is very much in the Philippines. It happened in the Philippines, and they just used it to kill young men. And this is what this is going to do. So now is also the time, if you know people who are street pharmacists, to try to reroute them into different avenues. But I also
really
want
almost
to point
like
out that white supremacist biker gangs are the ones out here flooding the streets with this poison
and fentanyl and all that.
And y'all think it's just like urban gangbangers.
Yep.
But are those gangs going to be the ones targeted? No. And that's the unfortunate reality is it's like we're moving from mass incarceration to like mass executions. Because we know when white men say gangs, and we're talking about dismantling gangs, that these white people think Crips, Bloods, they think like MS-13, they think like the Mexican Mafia. They're not thinking about the white biker gangs, right? They're not thinking about Hell's Angels and these type of gangs, right? Or Sons of Anarchy, right? They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about, we voted for this man because he told us he was going to, this is about punishing black and brown people. To me, ultimately, this is about you seeing a country, black and brown people like having babies, and birth rates rising, white people's birth rate are not remaining stagnant or going down. And you want somebody that's going to get all of these people either out of the country by mass deportation or literally execute black people. And again, now that the police understand that they have this power, right? We want to dismantle these gangs up into the death penalty. And they have a president in place that's saying police immunity. What do we think the outcome is going to be? According to what we've heard recently, a Michigan state police shot and killed a young man recently. So are we going to see more of this?
You know what's interesting? Like the irony of all of this is sickening because we're acting like Trump didn't have 34 felonies, right? We acting like his entire cabinet in his last administration was all people he bailed out of jail and got pardons, and like they wasn't out here breaking the law. Yeah, like they was like we acted like
he like runs a criminal gang.
He
like
has
Donald Trump runs a criminal gang. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like this motherfucker wasn't impeached twice. Yes. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't under suspicion of trading sensitive information with other countries. Like he wasn't looking at, flushing down nuclear launch codes and all that, Mar-a-Lago under the toilets and all that. Yes. You know what I mean? Like what are we really talking about here? You know what I mean? Like, it's scary hours right now in the States, man. Like it's really spooky out here.
It is really, it's like we have to brace, right? And particularly like if you're black and brown, because, Trump also is naming, Stephen Miller, who we know is like really like, I think, how old is Stephen Miller? He's like 35, but he looks like,
man, So how about you were a bigot, man? You age like milk.
Yeah, he looks. But anyway, Stephen Miller is somebody who was the architect of Trump's family separation plan, right? Where he was separating families, and then Trump named a new border czar,
which is crazy.
And this border czar is on record. What's this man's name? Oh, Tom Homan is his name. He did, prior to being elected border czar or named border czar by Trump, he did an interview on 60 Minutes. We'll play a clip of that interview.
This is foul talk, man. If it'll queue up, there we go.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
That's such a crazy.
We have seen one estimate.
He talking heavy.
Families can be deported together.
So can I say what I had said yesterday?
Yes.
On social media. So
what did you say?
So what I had said yesterday was the overwhelming majority of the 55% of the other races that voted for Trump.
Yes.
Right. and the Latin for Trump movement being so powerful.
Yes.
No one was surprised about their resurgence in this election.
Right.
I think that for me, what was interesting was the 55% of other races, like Arabs, Asians, everybody else.
Yes.
But the question I have is, what do you lot plan to do when your chickens come home to roost? What are you going to do with those eggs?
I mean, they're going to have to go back to their country with them eggs. I mean, what can they do?
Like,
yeah.
So it's like, you're voting. You clearly were suckered into voting against your self-interest. And now that immigration is probably going to be the forefront and the number one thing that this administration starts to enforce when they resume power in January. So you absolutely have family members that are undocumented.
1,000%.
You have
yeah.
siblings, you have people that are close to you that are absolutely undocumented. So you voted for what? To eliminate them? Like
there's a clip. I'm putting this clip. And it really, this clip kind of sums up the mentality. Mind you, this is a Latino man that has a Trump hat on.
They let in hundreds thousands of people who already have criminal records. If deporting them creates a mass deportation, I'm all for it.
But what if rounded up in all of that are people who work on a farm? They're doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do. Does that worry you?
That wouldn't be fair. Of course, they need to make sure that they don't throw away, they don't kick out, they don't deport people that are family oriented.
Right. So it's this idea of like, oh, I'm one.
I'm one of the good ones. It's
I'm one of the good ones.
But you bought into that dream. Like,
yes.
The thing is, it's like, it doesn't stop or start with you. You're part of the collateral damage. Like, you're not exclusionary in this. Like, there's no exemption for you. It's the fact that you voted for an America that does not include you.